So, good morning. My name is Elizabeth Spiers. I'm a contributing columnist at the New York Times, and I co-host Slate Money, which is a podcast about financial news of the week. I was asked to moderate this panel because I wrote a column a while back about Jeremy Strong at Yale and how people had reacted to him. Also, because I feel like this is important for the context of this particular gathering. I grew up in Alabama. My dad was a local lineman for Alabama Power for over 40 years. My mother was the janitor at my high school, and I was the first person in my family to go to college. So this topic is near and dear to my heart. Our guests today are Betty Yu, who is both Betty and our other guest, Jess Barbagallo, are multi-hyphenate people with several different talents and can speak to the plight of artists coming from working class backgrounds very well because they have a wide range of talents. So Betty is an award-winning filmmaker, a multimedia artist, a photographer, and an activist, born and raised in New York City. Jess is a theater artist, teacher, and writer. You know, some people see opportunity as a window into what, they could be. But for a lot of us, what looks like opportunity for somebody else is actually a wall. I think for me, just the process of applying for college and financial aid was like that. It's the sort of thing that whenever you listen to particularly right-wing politicians talk about opportunity in this country, they say, well, anyone can apply for financial aid, or you can figure out how to do college somehow if you work hard enough. And for me, just even figuring out the process of how to get in, given that nobody in my family had ever applied, and just navigating the financial aid process was very difficult. And this was before the internet, so I couldn't just Google it. For you, what were some things that I think other people would have viewed as obvious opportunities that were actually more difficult for you because you're coming from a different background that's less privileged? Let's start with you, Jess.
Well, the first thing that came to mind, you're giving me like a flashback to a memory I have from college. I started in like 2001, and I remember I had to like redo, I think I had to like renew my financial aid or the paperwork from long ago, and I remember doing this on my own in my dorm room, and like I had a bunch of friends from studio, I was studying acting, and they like drunkenly called me, and they're like, what are you up to? You doing your FOSFA? Like, right, they thought it was sort of they thought it was like sort of a joke, but this was like, really imperative to me. And so I was oftentimes used to being, you learn like certain kinds of code switching when you're like surrounded by wealth and you don't have as much as your friends, but you're living in New York City and you want to run with those people. And, so that's like a little memory I have. Wait, you? No, well, sorry. There's something. This is a complicated framework that you're putting forward, like a thing that's looks like an opportunity to some, is a roadblock to others. Okay, so I could give okay, if you want to make independent theater in New York City, right, and like you manage to get an inroad with a venue that probably has very little money to give you, that's an opportunity, right? And if you come from independent means or have networks that can sort of help you support that project, right? Then you're like, oh my God, what an amazing opportunity. Now, like if you've been working for a really long time toward that and you're like, how the fuck am I going to pay like this body of actors I want to work with? Then suddenly that like opportunity, right, like turns into maybe a very challenging fundraising project that like actually distracts from your ability to be maybe the writer, director you want to be. You end up feeling like you're underpaying collaborators. The work is really thrilling because people are there by virtue of love, and I like to possess an egalitarian spirit, so I continue to work with young artists who pay me sometimes stipends of like $250 to do their new play. And I do it because I'm like, well, next year I might be asking you to do a play for $250, right? And I'm 41. So, so that's like, I feel like that's maybe a kernel of an example of like I have an opportunity, but this is what it actually takes to fulfill it.
But Betty, what about you?
Yeah, it's complicated. Yeah, I agree. Question, because there's so many layers in terms of early in my life, or even more recently, right? The walls that become windows. For me, I think early on, I would just say that there was an inner struggle, right? Like, can I actually do this? There's the self-doubt that happens, as a woman, as an Asian American, whatever, as a person who came from a poor working class background, the same at NYU. I was really ashamed to tell anyone what my parents did. I traveled from Brooklyn. I was a commuter. Back then, it was like, where do you live? What? Where Notorious B.I.G. is? Like the violence and the gunshots and in the 90s, for real. And people made fun of my Brooklyn accent, and very quickly I had to get rid of it. I was like, I'm gonna get rid of this. Like within, I think, a few weeks, I just figured out how to get rid of my Brooklyn accent. So really ashamed and just trying to figure stuff out. Everybody was Hollywood focused, which is fine. I was more documentary focused around social justice issues. I was politicized when I was in high school, like I said, so I knew really what I wanted to do. And for me, being involved with this immigrant rights organization in Chinatown and making work about them, I think that, I was often dissuaded from that. It was like, why don't you try more of the narrative piece, and even with documentary. But for me, it was really personal. It was providing a portal into these injustices that people don't normally see every day, like third world conditions in our own backyard. And I think we know that maybe now, but sweatshop conditions at that time, these 500 garment factories in Chinatown, what folks were going through and toiling long hours, maybe it wasn't as widely known. And so a lot of my work revolved around that. And it was until I met, if folks know who George Stoney is, God bless him, he was 95 when he passed away, about 15 years ago now. He was my professor. Between him and Sam Pollard, who is very well-known editor, of course, Spike Lee's editor, really encouraged me, and I kept going. And he saw a diamond in the rough, I guess. He said, you should make this documentary about your mom, how she got politicized and then organized, even though she was blacklisted by the industry, meaning she couldn't find a job because she was standing up for what she believed in, along with other people. And my sister, the story was through my sister and my mom's lens, and I captured all this footage from the hunger strike and from rallies, and that really galvanized like international media attention and to put my own voice in it. And all that to say that I just kept persisting because I knew this was my passion. I knew this is what I wanted to do. And Sam Pollard and was one of my mentors, and George Stoney was really just a beautiful person who pushed me. Ended up getting this film into the International Market Mead Film Festival. If that means anything, that was a big deal for me because it was my thesis film from undergrad. And I'll just say that. Just to pursue your dreams, and it's like it's ebb and it's not a straight line. I left documentary film, and now I do a lot of installation. Anyway, it's sort of a mixture of things. But I left it because I was really sick of how elite it was, and I just did direct organizing for a while, and I did media documentation as my side thing. And then realizing I was really bad at the organizing, and I have so much respect for community organizers. I really, truly do. I was really bad at it. And so I realized my contribution is through arts and culture and media, and that's my contribution. Understanding, though, for me, that arts and culture and media, these are tools, and they don't mean a damn thing if they're not a part of a larger grassroots movement that are led by folks who are directly impacted, pushing for change. And I saw that in my mom, I saw that in my sister, I saw that in my comrades and my people, and those are my people. Those are my people that I embrace it, and wherever I am, that's my framework, that's my foundation that I go to. So understanding my positionality and always being humble, I think is really important, because I'm just a small speck in this bigger sea of what is happening, especially right now, given the world that we're in. So it's really important that artists speak up right now, because we're the ones that actually can help change hearts and minds, whatever medium we're working with. And it's like now more important than ever that we really try to stand forward and, stand with our immigrant neighbors and, and that kind of thing. The folks who are getting, who are facing repression, and figure out what can we do to be allies. What can we do in this moment that is historical? So
Yeah. I think for a lot of us who, if you grew up working class and your parents have particularly jobs in manual labor, things like that, and then you go into an arts field, I'm sure a lot of us have had this experience of family not really understanding what you're doing or whether it's a real job. I sort of fell backwards into writing after working at a startup and being an equity analyst for a hedge fund. Because I co-founded a website called Gawker, and then just by writing that, I had editors approach me and say, "Do you want to write for us?" And then years later, sometimes I also teach at a J school, and so students will ask, how did you break into the industry? And I always say accidentally, and they'll say, well, when did you know you wanted to be a writer? And I would say I didn't. I knew that I thought I was decent at it. But I was the last person to recognize that I could have it as a job, because I think I grew up in a family where that was not a real job. Things in the arts were not a real job. If it was a real job, you have to hate it, and it has to be really burdensome. So, at what point did you two decide, you know what, I can do this as a career? It's okay for me to be an artist, even though I know it might be financial struggle, it's going to be difficult, but it's what I need to do. So I'm going to go Betty first, and then just for...
To catch my breath. That's a really tricky question. I just had this fire in my belly. I never wanted to pursue anything else. And if I'm struggling and, make ends meet, I was doing so many adjunct gigs, adjuncting, and doing, working on projects. I think for me, when 10 years ago, I helped co-found a collective called Chinatown Art Brigade, and we work with activists who are other activists and people who are facing displacement and gentrification, mainly in Chinatown, using art and culture to really highlight their stories, particularly monolingual Chinese-speaking immigrants. And we did projections. We're using new media, film, video, to amplify their stories. And I think for me, that solidified the power that art and media has to really not only sort of convince people that, these folks who are facing eviction and harassment, all that their stories are worth listening to. But then even in our own circle, seeing that the power of us coming together and demystifying the media production process, that you have the 70-year-old who doesn't consider themselves an artist, but you find out they sing opera and they write calligraphy, suddenly feel empowered to do this with us and work together. That was when I knew that I really, really, really wanted to continue this work. And the last thing I will just say is that when my parents were like, what the hell are you doing for 20 years, right? And they saw me on some Cinevision, which is an Asian American station. And then that same moment they saw a newspaper, and then they saw a New York Times thing. And they're like, oh, I get it, full circle. And it took that, of all things. I'm like, all these other things, I'm interviewing you guys, I'm highlighting, it was that. I'm like, really? So that really felt extremely meaningful to me.
My parents are not readers of anything, so I sometimes go on MSNBC or CNN to talk about a column, and that's the only thing that I do that convinces my parents that I'm gainfully employed.
And one last thing I have to say is that, so the other thing besides the newspapers and the media piece was, so I'm working on this book that's coming out next month. It's through the lens of my grandfather's archive from the 20s to the 70s, and collages. I started to uncover that my family has been here for 4 generations, but because of the Chinese Exclusion Act, they couldn't really build roots here. So a lot of back and forth. And again, full circle moment when my mom was just in tears, didn't realize it was all dedicated to our family and our family roots. But obviously it's a bigger statement. It's like a 5-alarm fire, I think, right? It's really similar to what's happening right now, right? On so many levels. So I just want to say that again, I don't know why I realized I wanted my mom's approval or something. I never thought I did, yeah. But until that moment, for 25 years, and then more recently, it was I get it. It meant the world to me. It really did.
Jess, what about you? When did you decide, I can do this, it's fine for me to go be an artist?
I literally did a trades training program last year. So, still
not sure.
I was not good at one skill. But my instructor was really excited because she'd seen me on an episode of Law and Order. So it was it was the only cachet I had in the class. Similar to when I was was being vetted for jury duty, and everybody was so excited about that. I'm like, is Dick Wolf here right now? Like, please have me back because it gives meaning to my father. Like, yes, my parents have not. No, I mean it's really deep what you're saying. I mean, I wish my mom knew that she lives inside of all the work that I make, but I have no way of really translating that to her. And in the 25 years I've been here, she's come to one play that I've been in, and my dad has maybe come to two. So my parents don't really have. They don't. It's very emotional, you know. They love me very much, but this is not the language they speak. They're people who like love being in the country actually, and they love quiet and space around them, and they find this place really loud and scary kind of. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm like a combination of like I'm a person who just follows my desire because I can't help but, and I'm also a pragmatist, which is probably a working class thing. Which makes me sort of free associate to the kind of how disconcerted I am when I encounter kinds of entitlement in rehearsal rooms, the ways that certain people take space because their training programs have like supported them, or they've had networks that are like, take all the space you want. And I'm like, oh my God, whoa. And even after 20 years, like I still feel that way. Yeah, so like when I graduated from school at 21, I thought I was going to leave NYU after my first year. I mean, I was mousy, I was shy, but mischievous, yeah. But I also was like, oh, I can't go back home. I mean, I remember my audition for NYU. I don't think they let me in because I gave some brilliant delivery of a Paula Vogel monologue. I think it was like I said to Patricia Decker, who's like still a colleague at NYU, I said to her, I'm a feminist and I live in a small town and I have to get out of there. And later I talked to her about that. You know, I think that that's what it was. Like I knew I needed to be in a place where I think I kind of knew jack shit about my gender or sexuality, but I knew I needed to be next to more difference, and I was living in a very homogenous, white, straight, like sort of religious environment, and I needed to leave. So when I was like 21, I was like I had no agent. I didn't understand how the commercial world worked at all, but I did have a couple professors who took me under their wing and brought me into their theater company, and I loved making art with them, and then everything sort of proceeded from there.
Well, thank you. It's been great to hear from you guys, and thank you for having all of us.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll wrap up with that.